Okay, I believe we are live and back with another episode of Liticast. I'm very happy to introduce our guest today, who actually, on top of being a very early client of Litify, Rubenstein Law was one of the first who really embraced our platform and took their business model and one in which they really embrace process and data and analytics and making decisions based on those, and really kind of folded it into our approach and our platform. And they've done tremendously well. So it's been a very good partnership. So I'm very proud and happy to introduce Nicole Armstrong, who's the CEO of Rubenstein Law. Nicole, welcome.
Hi, nice to see all you guys, or not see you, I guess.
Yes.
Thank
you.
That I drove Litify crazy in the beginning because I made them come back and do a zillion demos, and we made them do a zillion customizations for us. But I'm so glad, and they were good sports.
Good. Well, it's not good sports. We actually like to see that. I've been talking to customers this week, in fact, and we actually like that versus someone who's more quiet and just sort of assumptive, because we want to understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Right. And the fact when customers do engage on that level and they ask all those questions up front, and for us, that literally our antenna goes up like, cool, this is going to be a good customer to work with because they're thinking about this the right way, versus someone who thinks we're going to come in and sprinkle magic pixie Litify dust over their firm and somehow magically they're going to be 30% better or 50% better, whatever the number is. So do not apologize at all for that, for maybe a little bit of the upfront work, maybe a little bit of the negotiation, but again, thank you so much for joining. If you're joining us from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from our own website, from the Liticast plug on our website, please ask questions. Please make comments. Nicole is a very accomplished, not only lawyer and firm runner, but a business person as well. She really, really embraces all of the analytics, as I mentioned. So, but yeah, we'll just jump right in. I'll ask you a couple quick questions, and then, like I said, we could just go off on wherever the conversation takes us. But we've been trying not to go too heavy into COVID and sort of the new reality, and I think we're all a little bit sick of that. But I am curious, the last couple months, what data have you guys used to kind of steer your decision making, and like what have you done with maybe personnel or ads or whatever? I'm just curious, sort of what some of the changes you guys have made in the past couple months.
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest change that I think everyone made is having staff work remotely. So, and that's where you really, really need that data, because if you can't walk around the office and look what people are doing. The only way you know that they're working and doing what they're supposed to do is by the data. So we tweaked some of our dashboards so we could track it a little bit better. But we had a lot of stuff in place already to help us keep track of our people. So we can see what they're doing. We can see the different milestones, how long it's taking them to hit those milestones. We look at our dashboards on a regular basis. So that's made a really big difference. And I would say intake is the other big change, because we used to send out an investigator to sign up every single client. And obviously now they don't want us to do that, and we don't want to put our investigators at risk. So we've been doing virtual signups, which again, we were kind of set up to do anyway, because we were doing everything on a Microsoft Surface tablet right into Litify. So now we're just doing it virtually, but I had to really adjust our metrics to make sure we were getting those done. So I hadn't thought of like how many times do we send something out for e-sign, and how often does it get signed same day? That's something I never thought about before, but we started adding reports for things like that. How long does it take to get an e-sign returned? Which intakers are able to get their e-sign signed on the phone call, on the initial intake call, because those are the people that are doing something right. So we had those people share tips. We made use of Zoom, of course, and a few other platforms. But we did things like we would even send out kind of an email video to staff, giving them tips or giving them little pep talks, that kind of thing, especially with intakes. That was the biggest, I think that was the most stressful change of all the departments, just because they're always on the phone, and most of them have kids at home that they're trying to help take care of, but still be on the phone and keep a quiet environment. So intake, general work at home were the biggest changes, I think.
I'm gonna use your intake discussion as a segue to, and I wanted to welcome anybody who's joining us from FJA. I know we're actually new sponsors of FJA, and Nicole, I know you're on the executive board there. But we're going to be talking about intake specifically, I think, in one of the upcoming events for FJA. So first of all, I'd like to thank that group for really being welcoming to us as a sponsor and helping us. But I'm looking forward to kind of discussing that in more detail. You guys were set up because I think you had a lot of that infrastructure in place, and you had a lot of sort of the core metrics and benchmarks and such in place. So you were able to tweak it. You brought up one thing in passing there, which I think is very important. People forget about, because I often go into firms and I ask them about reports and metrics, and they know a lot of sort of summary information in terms of dollars and things like that. But you mentioned something very important: time. And a lot of times you don't know the time that lapses between, an initial conversation and an actual conversion to a retainer being sent, things like that. The fact that you're tracking that and measuring that and being able, to kind of really succinctly determine what's working there, that's very important, because that we all know that sort of that time factor, the longer it stretches out, the less likelihood you had of actually getting a client on board. So very, very smart of you guys to look at that metric, and a lot of firms don't, frankly.
Yeah, and the time factor is important across the whole case, so the whole life of the case, because if every assistant can handle and every attorney can handle a finite number of cases. So if one team can get their cases done in a year and another team takes 3 years, depending on the type of case, obviously assuming it's the same type of case and complexity, you want the team that's moving faster as long as they're getting the same result. But you want to keep it in that sweet spot, because you don't want to rush them through it, and then you don't maximize the value. So that's the key, is finding that balance between maximizing time, maximizing value, being efficient, and getting the best result all at the same time.
Yeah, that combination of customer satisfaction, obviously your reputation, your brand is on the line, the speed in which you can operate, those two factors, and then case value, frankly, is I think the three that people are mindful of. And again, kind of shameless plug for Litify. We always try to really kind of keep those three things in mind and expose them for clients so they can see it and make improvements where necessary. So excellent. What are you sensing for the future here? What do you, as we transition back to the new normal, quote unquote? And I've actually been here in Florida. I'd mentioned to you, I've been in a condo here in Florida, but back in New Jersey, things are still a little locked down. Things are starting to open up here, certainly in South Florida. But I'm just curious, your take on, are you going to be shifting resources again? Like, how does the firm pivot back to whatever we're going to call normal at this point?
Right. We're taking it slowly. So I know that we're opening up in Florida. We're going to do our phase 1 opening of our offices, but we're taking it slowly and we're making it optional. We still have a lot of people who are taking care of kids at home, and there's no childcare available, or they're not comfortable yet with childcare. So we're letting people stay at home, and we're comfortable with that. And I actually feel like long term, that's a great thing. We've always shied away from having people work remotely because of the fear that we don't know what they're doing, or the fear that they're distracted, or even, they have sensitive data on their computer if they walk away from it, or we don't want it to be compromised. So, but when this happened, we had to do a push and get everybody, all 300 employees, working remotely and still be comfortable, number one, with security, and then number 2 and 3 with keeping them accountable and making sure they're doing their work. So, but being able to do that and seeing that it's still working and we can see all the numbers and they're continuing to be productive, I was shocked by how little our productivity declined. So I feel like it's given us this confidence to let people have some flex days. So people hate using sick days for when they're actually sick, or we don't segregate sick and vacation. We just give them paid time off. And people hate using PTO for when they're actually sick, but they feel well enough to work. But we're, even before all the COVID-19 stuff, we have kind of a germophobic culture at the office. So we tend to send people home if they seem sick. So then, people don't like that. They want to work. They're well enough to work, but we don't want them spreading germs. So, but now we feel confident we can give them flex days. We're thinking about doing that. even just going forward. So that helps.
Yeah, I think an interesting takeaway, if you want to call it that, as part of this whole thing is, I think it's made us more human because, we've all seen those videos of a little kid walking into the weather guy doing, and we all were kind of tolerant around it now, where it used to be in the past, like, oh no, I'm working from home and there's a noise or dog bark or whatever. Now people are like, whatever, let's just get done what we need to get done. I actually had my son walk through. My son's 6'3", he's 15, and like someone laughed, like, who's that? I'm like some dude just walked by. I'm like, that's my son. I'm like, don't worry about it. But yeah, I think the interesting thing is that the human element, and then also productivity. Like we were actually at Litify. Now we're not a law firm, we're a technology business, but our productivity is incredible. Like we've actually seen, people working earlier, working later, when we're not necessarily hell bent on the specific hours. But it's just, people have that flexibility to kind of work when they need to or can or whatever, and they need to take care of family stuff. I agree. I think it's going to be, that might be part of the new normal. I think we're going to go back to offices, obviously, but I think people are going to be tolerant as long as the job is getting done, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. My son likes to make cameos to all of my meetings. It's like he has a sixth sense. If I'm meeting, he all of a sudden appears and sometimes says something embarrassing or tells me about how he's going potty or something like that.
That's awesome. Love it. That's funny. Getting back on track, because I could talk about that stuff all day, but how do you discern the difference, sort of good data, bad data, and what is actionable and what, obviously we'd like to think everything's good data, but I know there are times you have to kind of figure out what maybe not maybe bad data is the wrong way to put it, useful and less useful data. How do you kind of make that distinction?
So I feel like there's kind of two categories of bad data. One is just, the old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. So if your teams, if your staff, if your attorneys are putting in incorrect data, or they're not putting in the data they're supposed to, it can confuse you. It can make it seem like something's happening that's not, or not happening that is. So it's important that everybody's on board with entering their data. And I find the best way to get people on board with it is twofold. One is to hold them accountable, sometimes by file audits, where I'll put it right up on the screen. We'll go through their cases and we'll look at different aspects of their case. And if things are missing, eventually they realize the importance, they need to put it in there, because otherwise in the audit, they're scrambling to find information. And then the other way to get people on board with entering their data is just showing them the value of it. That's really the biggest motivator, especially with the attorneys. Once they see how it can help them, all of a sudden there's no more pushback. They want to enter that data. They want to have their team enter that data because they can get the information they need to make more money on their cases.
Right.
And then kind of the other element of bad data is data that's accurate, and it wasn't garbage in, but it can be deceiving, especially if there's another piece of data you're not looking at the same time. So for instance, years ago we realized that our demand letters some of them were taking longer than we wanted to go out. So we started tracking how long it takes for each individual attorney and staff member to get their demand letters out, from the opening of the file to demands going out. So we thought, great, let's look at this information. Let's encourage them to get these demand letters out faster when it's time. What we didn't anticipate was that the staff took that very seriously. And so instead of letting the case evolve and letting the client see all the doctors they needed to see, the staff was encouraging clients to finish up their treatment quickly so they could get the demand out faster. So of course, the attorneys would step in and stop it. But when we saw that had kind of become the staff culture, where they were trying to push these demands faster and the attorneys were fighting that, there was a battle there between getting them out fast and maximizing value, we stepped in and said, okay, that's not the only metric. We need to look at this in the big picture with all of the metrics. So that's where a dashboard comes in handy, because you can put up all of your metrics together, and then you're not looking at one in a vacuum saying, let's increase this. You can look at them together and say, okay, well, there's a correlation between the time it takes to get a demand out and the value of the case. If it's too short, unless it's something catastrophic where there's no treatment like a death case or something tragic like that, there's a sweet spot. There's a certain amount of time that they need to see all their doctors and get all their procedures that are recommended by the doctors. And if you do it too fast, you undervalue the case. But if you let it linger and they get their procedures and you just haven't pushed it out, bad things happen to cases. Clients get in another accident. Clients pass away from something unrelated. So you need that sweet spot. And that's where you have to look at all of the data together.
Yeah, so maybe that in that category might be impartial data, where you're looking at one portion of it. Another interesting thing you brought up there is sort of the behavioral component of it, where you put a metric in place that you're tracking and you make it known that it's important, and then it has an undesired effect on the behavior. But the I guess the good news part of that is that you have the ability to pivot. And as you were telling that story or giving that example, I thought of something that Robert told, the story that he told. Wasn't there an office that was going to be opened or shut down or something and what was happening is they were actually funneling, I think it was retainers were going through another office. So you were going to open a third office in an area, and it was actually like a data error. And you guys caught it, right?
Yes. So whenever we decide, it was actually not about opening an office, but about adding litigators.
Right.
And it was about increasing office space.
Right.
So we thought that for some reason, we couldn't understand it, but it seemed like our West Palm Beach cases weren't getting to litigation as much as our other offices. And we were on the attorney, we were looking at his cases, trying to figure out why. We were saying, let's add more space in Broward because we have more litigation there, and not add more space in Palm Beach. And then when we dove into it, we realized it's because they were changing the office location because a Broward litigator was handling the case.
Right.
So we thought that we didn't have any West Palm litigation, but the facts were we had plenty of it. It was just being handled by our Broward litigators. So they were traveling. So once we realized the error, we trained the person correctly so that they would stop changing that field. And we took more space in West Palm, and we hired some West Palm litigators, and that was perfect.
Yeah, I remember when Robert shared that story at one of our live Liticast events, I did like the fist pump behind the thing because it was, again, it was maybe preventing something from happening that shouldn't have happened by utilizing the data in the right way. So that's exactly, the intent of a system. Again, shameless plug for Litify, but that's what we try to do is point these things out or really get an understanding, a full understanding of what's going on. With your inventory, with your cases, with your personnel, all that stuff. So that's an excellent use case of it.
Yeah.
I'm curious if like along those lines, that's a good example, I guess. But has anything else been exposed from a data perspective that maybe you weren't thinking about, or something you pivoted on based on something you saw at a report or a dashboard?
Yeah. One of the things we analyze are the average fees, and we break them down by different attorney. We break them down by case type. We have a lot of factors we look at, different injuries, different defendants, things like that. And we spotted one practice area that had a significantly higher average fee than auto, for example. So, and I'm not going to share what that area was. I can't share all my secrets, but we ended up putting more money into advertising that specific area because we realized those were higher value cases, and they went to litigation more often, which often means higher value. And we wanted those cases, so we put a push, and it paid off, and we made money on those cases.
That's great. That's phenomenal. I'm curious what, because it's funny. I had this thought when I was preparing for this earlier today, and this is totally off topic, not totally off topic, but kind of off topic. We saw a lot, even within Litify, we have, we're promoting like women in leadership. We're putting, more emphasis on, certainly in technology. That's an area. And I've been to your offices, and I'm actually going to go the other direction. I want to like stand up for the men, because like your office is full of very, very powerful women that like was intimidating for me to walk around in, but really doing amazing stuff. And I actually just wanted to give you a kind of a compliment, because it's great to see. It's great to see as someone with 4 daughters and 3 sisters, and a mom and a mom-in-law and a wife who are very, very powerful women. Like, that is so awesome to see. But just again, I know this is sort of hitting you from left field, but I just wanted to first commend you for that. That's awesome. And is that part of your hiring criteria, or like how does that all come to be?
It's just kind of happened. And our managing partner, Nympha Schmidt, who might actually be watching, I'm not sure, but she's pretty busy. She is amazing. And she's one of she's number 3 after me. It's Robert, me, and then Nympha. And she's amazing. And she's been with the firm forever. She started as a receptionist, and then she left for law school, and she worked elsewhere and came back to us. And her skill speaks for itself, and she's been great, and she's helped us grow so much. So we've kind of just been lucky getting really amazing women. We've got a lot of amazing women attorneys and women supervisors. We also do have a lot of amazing men attorneys and supervisors.
Come on. You're just throwing them in there to be nice. Stop. No, you guys have a very, very, very powerful firm. I'm very proud to call you guys a client. I'm actually going to kind of go downstream on this sort of analytics discussion, meaning I know you use the analytics. I know, anybody in the executive position are really kind of looking at top down, but I know the answer to this, shocker, audience out there, but because I promote this, I literally had this conversation last night with the managing partner of a firm in Texas. And I told him, I said, yeah, reporting is awesome and analytics are awesome, but the trick is to get the user understanding those analytics and getting them, because he was concerned about adoption. He was like, he's like, Terry, this might be the most amazing program in the world, but if nobody uses it, what the hell is the point? And I was like, that's a great question. I said, and honestly, the trick, it's not a trick, there's ways to do it. I said, but you have to get everybody understanding how to make their job better and how it helps their partner get better and the person downstream by understanding all those analytics. Maybe just tell us a little bit about how you got everybody to embrace it in your firm.
Yeah, for me, I've been through a lot of software rollouts at the firm. So we've at least 4, some really big ones. And yes, it's the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle in the beginning is adoption. But I feel like I've got a lot of practice, and Amanda, who spearheaded our Litify rollout in-house, she's got a lot of experience with that too, and she was amazing with that. But like I said before, the biggest way to get people to adopt is to show them the value. So with dashboards, an easy way we did that is we've got TVs up on the wall in a lot of our departments, and we throw the dashboards right up there. So not only do the supervisors and attorneys and managers and everybody look at dashboards, but a lot of departments, our staff is looking at the dashboards. We've got one in intake where they can see their stats and their closing rates and how many calls they're taking and things like that. We have them in a few places. We have one in our imaging department. I'm trying to think where else. We have a few of them. But even departments that are too spread out, or departments where it doesn't make sense to put it on a wall, most of them are looking at dashboards. Everybody, when they log in, they have their home screen dashboard, and it helps them figure out where their cases are, what they're doing, what they need to focus on. A huge one is statute of limitations. I look at that constantly, naturally. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's right there in everyone's face. It's easy to see. And those are the things. When an attorney realizes they can keep themselves from ever blowing a statute just by having correct data, they're going to adopt the system a lot better. And a lot of our attorneys use flagging systems, so they'll use a color system that Nympha implemented, where they have their files, their most important files. All the files are important, but the ones that are biggest, the ones they can categorize them, the ones that they're looking at for litigation, the ones that are going to settle soon, the ones with really terrible injuries, and it helps them stay organized, especially since we don't have paper files. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, we love to see that, from it's adoption, also from a technology perspective. And again, another client discussion I had this week, someone was asking about basically trial prep and then trial presentation being part of Litify. And, could we do that? The answer is yes. Obviously it's yes. Could we expose documents and put them in a format that would be very helpful for a client, for a lawyer who's in a courtroom? Yes. I said, we have had discussions around that. We want to do that. I said, but frankly, what we wait for is if we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 clients that are asking for that, and then we accelerate that up our product roadmap. I bring this up because it's ideas like that, like color coding, doing proactive notifications. We got so many of those things that are embedded in our product right now, ideas from customers like you who brought that up. And they said, proactive SOL notifications would be really tremendous. If we could somehow sync that with the calendar and have it so it's flagged and it comes up as an activity on the calendar or a notification on the calendar, that'd be great. We had enough clients that asked us for that, so we moved that up the product stack. Another one you mentioned earlier, which we hadn't really done, was treatment, where if there's treatment notifications, just almost reminders. And some of this stuff is kind of basic CRM stuff, but we hadn't thought of it, and a customer raised it to us, or they were doing it themselves, and we said that's an awesome idea. We got to incorporate that into the product. So to the greater Litify community out there, please raise these ideas, suggest them, talk to your CSM, and if we get enough of those, or on our community page, if we get enough of those requests, we'll accelerate those types of asks up the product stack. And we do not claim to have the best ideas on the planet. You guys have them. So I know Rubenstein's firm, it definitely has. We probably can't keep up with your ideas, Nicole, frankly, but we're trying.
We use Litify in trial. We use it for litigation, of course. And we have a fantastic litigation dashboard. So I feel like there should never be a reason that plaintiffs should be late on discovery without, of course, given there's things beyond our control. But to have a defendant asking us for discovery, we're the ones, we want to push our cases to trial. We want to be in the courtroom. So that helps us. We have a dashboard that shows all the pending discovery and what's upcoming and what's past due. And then also on the defendant's side, what we're waiting for from them, so that nothing ever gets overlooked. If we've got an attorney with a lot of past due discovery, we can go and say, hey, what's going on? Maybe they need help. Maybe they're just, distracted right now. But the point is we can find out and we can take care of it so that nothing ever lingers. Yeah, we love it for litigation. We've made a lot of customizations for litigation.
Switching topics a little bit. I was curious. I've been asking all the guests that have been coming on this question, or anybody who's in your position. Where do you see trials? Are trials going to come back in person? Like I'll give you an example. So Keith Mitnick, great trial lawyer from Morgan & Morgan, he came on and he was like, it's the pageantry and the in-person sort of societal element about a trial that makes it so impactful. So he was very hard, like going, we're going to go back to live and we're going to not be looking back. Keith might get mad at me for saying it. I'm paraphrasing very strongly, but he was kind of in that camp. I've had other like Sean Flaherty from Catches who was like, video's awesome. Like if we can actually embrace it and use it and not have to fly an expert witness in from across, the West Coast, why not? Less cost, same impact. I'm curious where you sit on it, or there's no right answer, obviously. I'm just curious your opinion on it.
Well, I know Miami-Dade, for example, is looking into doing Zoom juries. And as much as I love technology, I am a little nervous about Zoom juries. I feel like part of the trial is the pageantry. Part of it is that personal connection with the jury. So it does make me nervous to have the jury looking at your face on a screen and looking at your client on a screen. It's a little bit harder, or a lot harder, to think of your client as a human being that suffered horrible losses when they're a picture on a screen. So, but I think the way that you have to attack that is you need to be interesting. You need to have great demonstratives. You need to do whatever you can to make it feel interesting for the jury and make them think of your client as a person. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a litigator, so that's all of my non-professional litigation ideas. But I think that I'm nervous to have Zoom juries. We talked about, do we want to try it with some of our cases where we feel like they may be more suitable for that situation, and maybe we will, but I'm not sure. It does make me nervous because it can be boring to look at a screen. So I think you really have to be interesting if that's going to be.
It can be boring. You get distracted. I just saw there was an article about a Zoom jury in Texas where the one person just left to get a phone, like the phone rang off screen, and you just saw them just get up and leave in the middle of like someone's opening argument or something. And it was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, come on, can't do that. It's crazy. But yeah, it's
on the side there, and you wouldn't even know.
Right. Right. It could be surfing the net by, doing that. It's very interesting. And it's one of the things that just yesterday we were discussing this because, a lot of businesses are built around sort of public speaking or presentation. I'm sure there's plenty of consultants in the legal field who will talk to litigators about how they present in court and everything. There's tons around there. We got someone who's offering to basically have us run meetings better via Zoom and be able to read body language and all this stuff like on Zoom, which is very interesting because it's something I hadn't really thought of. We're just thinking about, these video conferences being sort of like a bridge till we can get back to normal. But if it does become part of our every day, I guess you got to get better at it somehow.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be a new skill. In some ways, it's exciting. It's a new challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we're going to have to deal with, I think.
Some ways it's kind of scary. I totally agree. Okay, back on topic. You guys are growing. You guys have grown even while with Litify. You guys were, like I said, you came in very well situated because you had a very strong business focus. I'm curious sort of the process you guys think about as you either open a new office, you're thinking about a new practice area. I know we've had some discussions around that in the past, but I'd love to get your take on what do you look at, what do you ignore? Like, how do you kind of think about expansion?
Mm-hmm. Well, we look at a few things. When we're looking to open in a new city, we'll look at where our clients are situated. So if we notice we have a lot of clients in a certain area, we'll consider opening an office there because there's a need there and it's easier on them and it may attract more clients from that area. We'll also look at the value of the cases coming from each area. So if we notice that we have higher value cases in a certain geographic region, we'll open more offices there so that we can service more clients. And they're more interested in coming to you when your office is close to them. So we'll look at the case values. And then, of course, we'll consider things like the cost of rent and the cost of living there and what the economy is like. But I would say the biggest things we look at are where our clients are living and the value from each region. So, and same thing with new practice areas. If we notice, or even just expanding existing practice areas, if we notice, like I mentioned, we see there's a practice area that has a higher value case, we're going to start pushing advertising for that practice area. And that's been really successful for us, and it makes a huge difference. And it's easy to see. You can see it, and you can see it over time. That's the other thing that helps. You can track it over time. So we'll look at a graph of how values change over time, or how our cases increase in a certain area over time, things like that. And that helps us figure out trends as well.
Yeah, we, by the way, that was my dryer buzzer that just went off in the spirit of, embarrassing moments on video. We've actually been talking to a lot of firms because auto accidents are down, slip and fall at work are down. There's, some pretty dramatic statistics out there in terms of, maybe this part of your practice. But on the flip side, people are very curious with medical malpractice and some, obviously anything COVID related and sickness and work and Social Security disability. Is that something you're thinking about in terms of transitioning maybe some resource or headcount even from one to the other?
Our med mal department has been expanding. We've got 2 fantastic med mal lawyers. I think they may both be board certified. One is for sure. I'm not sure. One of them just got board certified. But that's been growing. And even without us putting a push on advertising, that's been growing in general. And that might just be partly from the climate right now. I think med mal is a great area to push. We haven't done Social Security. We looked into it before and we decided it wasn't really the direction we wanted to go, but we're constantly looking for new practice areas. And I think you have to diversify. I mean, auto's down, although it's starting to come back up now that we're reopening. But it's down from COVID, but ultimately it's going to be declining anyway, just from driverless cars and safety features and all of those things. So I think in any business, you need to think about what your risks are. You need to your threats in the future, and technology in the external sense, in terms of better cars, safer cars, is great for society, but it's not great for an auto practice. So you do need to diversify and add other businesses or other practice areas. And that's where it's a good place to look and see, what do you have more of? What areas are worth more? what do you already have mixed in with your current clients, and you can look to your current clients to see if there's other claims that they might have too, and that's a good way to add claims to your practice.
Yeah, we have from some clients, and you guys might be doing this, I don't recall, but that are looking back from a data perspective at all of their auto cases and looking for even product liability cases potentially, because if they see, and don't sue me, Volvo, I'm using Volvo as an example, but like, the 2012 Volvo X model was involved in an inordinate amount of accidents, and might potentially be something there. So we have some clients who are doing some data mining in that context. But you're right. I mean, I remember our first Liticast at Google's headquarters in New York 3.5 years ago now. And that was a big topic, was driverless cars and automation in that sense, and what that does to a business, and how are people preparing for it. And and it's something that everything we're talking about here, with data, with understanding, with the right type of mindset, you can sort of go to where the puck is going. Is that what it is? Wayne Gretzky? I don't know, whatever. Go where the puck is going instead of where it was. So yeah, very interesting. We actually have a question that came in from the audience. Let me read this to you. So for firms that are fully remote and can't use TV dashboards in the office to motivate their staff, is there another way you'd suggest motivating the team with these statistics, reports, et cetera, today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few things. In terms of them seeing the dashboard, you can just set it as their home screen, or if you're using a different system, then I can't speak to that. But you can push the data out to them, you can email it to them. But one thing we like to do is have contests. So we'll have contests in the different departments, whatever stat we want to improve. So maybe we want to see, we'll have a contest to see which team has the fewest client complaints in the client satisfaction department. So we'll do a contest and there'll be a winner. Or sometimes, because sometimes we don't really want to pit people against each other, we want them to have more of a teamwork atmosphere. So we'll do a contest where you're working against yourself. So if you can hit this benchmark or this benchmark or this benchmark, you can get this level prize or this level prize or that level prize. And you'd be surprised how excited people get about these contests, even if it's not a huge dollar value, even if it's, something small, something just recognizing their hard work. And they get very serious about it. And you will find that they dig into their own stats and they'll look to make sure you're accurate and to prove that their numbers were right and things like that. But they have a fun time with it, and it really does get them motivated. Just make sure you talk to your accountant or your accounting department, because you do have to do withholding. So we tend to do whatever the prize is. We'll advertise the after-tax amount for the prize. So the prize will be slightly bigger, but we tell them after tax it's going to be this.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll get upset, and you say, it's $100 prize, and then they say, okay, but why is it only 70? So keep that in mind.
You touched on something there that is so funny and so true. Like, just a little bit of competition, how people get, and we call it gamifying. We'll do stuff even internally at Litify where we'll gamify a certain situation with, speed or amounts or whatever, and people go nuts, and it's great, and it's great to see. And I mean, the analogy I always think of is when you go to when we used to go to ball games and they would shoot the t-shirts around. It's a crappy t-shirt you're probably going to maybe wear to bed once or twice, but I've seen people dive across aisles to get the damn t-shirt, and it's like, it's just a competitive element of like, I want the t-shirt, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're saying, because we've done the same things, and people get really invested. And the other thing I wanted to point out too, which is interesting, we've had clients that have shared reports of the most complained about attorney in their firm. Now, that's public shaming and can be effective, I will say, because you'll see very quickly that a lot of attorneys will start giving out their cell phone numbers and be much more communicative with their clients based on that. That's very extreme. And we do have, I would be lying if I said we don't have clients that do that. We do have clients that do that. But there's also the middle ground, like you just mentioned, where you're getting people to collaborate, which are those types of gamification components are really cool. And then also the straight up just competitions, like, whoever wins gets $100, whatever. And any one of them can be effective, but it's crazy to see where I love hearing the stories. And when customers come back and say, hey, we did something with the intakes group XYZ. And I'm just like, that's amazing. That really gets everybody kind of coalescing around the same issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And speaking of competition, we have dashboards that we call our attorney leaderboards. So we have a pre-litigation attorney leaderboard and a litigation attorney leaderboard, and it's got all kinds of data. It shows them, ranked by fees generated in total, average fees, all kinds of stats like that. And so we get friendly competition amongst our attorneys, and we have a really, really good group of attorneys. They're very good natured, they're good people, and they're very competitive. So they'll be competitive with each other, but at the same time, they like to share information. So someone will call someone up and say, hey, how are your average fees so high? Can you give me some tips? And they'll talk and they'll mentor each other and help each other out. So just looking at all the data and comparing to each other, it can help newer, younger attorneys learn from the more experienced attorneys. And also, I'm sure it feels good for those attorneys who are just killing it. I'm sure they enjoy that all the other attorneys can see it. So
Sure. King of the hill, right? Look at me. By the way, thank you, Christopher Gage, who I skate to where the puck is going, not where it's been. Wayne Gretzky. Thank you. That was the quote I was looking for. I totally butchered it. I apologize for that. But Christopher came to us through LinkedIn. So thanks for joining, Christopher, and correcting me on that one.
His ears were burning because I mentioned attorneys who are just killing it. So Chris Guy is one of our top attorneys.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so a little self-promotion there maybe thrown in. So, all right, Chris, we get it. Excellent. Yeah, it is really like I said, the more inventive ways you could do it, it really comes up. So what I for a couple things. One, thank you again for joining us today. Obviously, this has been really, really I think one of our best Liticasts, to be honest with you, because it's so great to see a firm like yours that really embraces. I mean, you were embracing it prior to Litify coming along, but you got for us, it's like when we can actually really, really supercharge what you guys are doing. That is like a home run for us for sure. So thank you for coming in and sharing some of that. Thank you for being a partner. And really, from the beginning, you weren't that much of a pain in the ass. I assure you that we do love to see people come in and ask a lot of questions. But not often you get that kind of compliment from one of your vendors, I guess. Nicole, thank you for not being too bad.
Yeah.
But appreciate that so much. And it was funny. The last part you were just saying, in my head, I'm thinking I have to write a book someday about the similarities between a sales team and a team of lawyers. I hadn't thought about it really that much prior to founding Litify a couple of years ago. And the similarities are there's very strong similarities. There's a competitive component. There's definitely the desire to help people. There's this desire to kind of improve and get better. And I think we share that. And I think that, again, I'm rambling a little bit, but it's just a very interesting concept to think about how similar some of these industries really are.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Cool.
I'm really grateful to be on here. It was fun. I love talking about data in general. And so Litify is it's almost like a toy for me because I have so much data to play with.
Excellent. I'm glad we could do that for you. And my very best to you and yours. Say hello to Robert for me. And thank you again for joining, Nicole. To our audience, please leave some comments. I mention this on every Liticast. If you have an idea for a guest, for a topic, please let us know what it is. We're happy to do it. We have an excellent lineup next week. We have Whites and Luxembourg that's coming on. Bill and Yahya from Whites and Luxembourg coming on. And I'm forgetting, there's another one too that's next week. I'm forgetting what it is. But we have a really good lineup next week. There's 2 Liticasts that are showing up. We're actually in the process now of scheduling some Liticasts out for later in the month that I think you guys are going to find really interesting. So subscribe to us. You get that information. Nicole, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining. And farewell, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Nicole.
Bye. Thanks.
All right, see ya.